All right, everybody, welcome to How to Run a Virtual Event. My name is Melissa Grant. I'm president of the Grassroots Democrats HQ. I'm joined by our phenomenal executive director, Tamara Melzer Levenson. And behind the scenes, making our presentation possible is our field director, Davis Hahn, and our field organizer, Shatara Byfield. We could not do this without them, so thank you both. Okay, now the objective of this session is to learn how to convert in-person grassroots campaign work to virtual campaign work while maintaining your volunteers' sense of community, commitment, and resilience through Election Day. It's really easy to establish a community when you have a brick and mortar location everybody can go to. So the job of a group leader in the virtual world is to recreate that sense of community and commitment among your volunteers to hang in there through Election Day.
Here is today's roadmap for what we're going to cover with you. We're going to start with going virtual, moving from a physical to an online event. Then we're going to talk about roles and responsibilities of virtual leaders, scheduling, virtual recruitment.
And then we're going to go into pre-event preparation, hosting the event, the follow-up after an event, and specifics for virtual phone banking, text banking, and postcard events.
Going virtual. Creating a virtual environment that is as inviting as a brick and mortar location. We have no more geographic boundaries. When we used to worry about how long is it going to take me to get to that meeting, it takes as long as it takes you to grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and join. We have more accessibility than ever. And one thing that we're going to tell everybody when we're working through this, there are many different platforms that you can work on. We happen to be recommending that Zoom is a very low-cost account. It costs $14.99 a month. And if you do that, you have unlimited access for the amount of time you can be running a meeting. So our first suggestion is join a Zoom account.
Now we're going to talk about roles and responsibilities of leaders. The responsibilities include cheerleading, being a teacher, a host, and support figure. You have to establish the standards and the goals for every event you want to do in working in collaboration or independent of campaigns. You want to make it fun and enjoyable for volunteers. So you need to put some time and energy into how you're going to do that. And then you need to choose the campaigns and the method of voter contact you're going to use in each event to make the greatest impact.
There are two primary responsibilities of an event leader. There are two primary responsibilities of being a virtual host. You are being an event leader. You want to greet people, and when they walk in the door, you want to have an icebreaker with them. You want to pretend like you're actually in a physical room with them, and how do you make them feel comfortable? You want to provide background on the candidates and the reason that you're having this event. Don't assume that people walk in knowing information. And then you want to train the attendees on the necessary skills. Again, you have to create the opportunity for those who are more advanced and those who are less advanced to make sure that you can keep growing your group each event after event after event. Think of yourself as a partner in crime. You want to have backup leaders for answering questions in the chat, posting relevant links, etc. This is a perfect example. We have Davis that is running our slides. We have Shatara that is watching the chat. We have Melissa and I presenting. And if we have breakout rooms, we'll talk about how that will work as well. Running a virtual event is a team effort.
Now let's talk about scheduling your virtual events. Remember that in COVID, there are no physical barriers or geographic barriers. So you must plan events recognizing that different time zones should be considered, because volunteers, just like you, are coming from all over the country, can come from all over the country. But that also means that it's more reachable to reach people, and people are online more than ever. Now you want to pick a date and time when you can spend 2 full hours for the event. We recommend that events be scheduled for Monday through Thursday in the evening and Saturdays and Sundays in the midday to afternoon. These are the most effective times for reaching volunteers. The other very important thing is to set the date for each event at least 2 weeks in advance. That will give you time to promote the event, to attract volunteers to it, for volunteers to sign up, and for you to set up all the tools you're going to need to make that event a success.
Virtual recruitment. You want to think about virtual recruitment in a couple different ways. If it's a small event and it's just your friends or 10 people that you know are going to be coming, or it's a set group of people, you can be sending out an email to them the day of, and in addition to what you did prior. So always remember that people's emails are filling up quickly. So you think that you've sent something a week ago, and everybody should be responsible. You are a host. You are the person carrying them forward. Make sure that you resend it to them the day of. If it's a larger event, if you're trying to be attracting and reaching from hundreds of people or thousands of people, you need to be thinking about using larger platforms for getting that information out. There are platforms like Mobilize America, Action Network. Why is it important to be able to find some of those CRMs, CRM, customer relations management? It's a technical term, but all it means is figuring out a platform that is cost effective for you. And by the way, we are going to give you how-to manuals for these things in more detail that is available on the website of the Grassroots Democrats HQ, and that we will also be making available through this conference. Mobilize American Action Network are just examples of how you can be reaching people. Because why? Facebook, we all think, is a great way of reaching people. But if you want to get to those massive numbers of people, one, not everybody is on Facebook. Facebook doesn't allow you to actually collect contact information for the attendees. And you also want to create systems to make it easy for you that automatically send out reminders and confirmation emails. So think about working in the virtual world and how to find those systems that automate things for you as much as possible.
Now, you can also do virtual recruitment through relational organizing. Relational organizing means you ask your volunteers to ask 3 of their friends or family members who they know have passion for what we're doing and are naturally patriotic to participate and volunteer themselves. When you reach out to your own friends and to your family members, the connection is much richer, and it can exponentially multiply your outreach for volunteer recruitment. Emails, texts, DMs, etc., to close friends and folks you know, this will be very effective, and we encourage all our volunteers and attendees to do this.
Virtual recruitment through social media. The people that I work with will often joke and say that Tamara says, if it wasn't on social media, it didn't really happen. The truth is, social media is an amazing recruitment tool. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, be creative. Think about where your audience is and what's actually going to grasp them. You can be posting photos and putting interesting captions there. We are currently in boxes. Look up, look down, look to the side, and it looks a little boring. So you want to figure out a way to take and capture that photo-based environment and make it look creative. We often tell people in events, to be honest, to take a picture of themselves, take their phone, make a selfie while they're sitting here right now, send it out and post about what is happening. Make sure that you have handles or what are called tiny URLs or just URLs for the different events. Share it out to everybody that is coming to your events. Share it out in that relational organizing that Melissa just talked about, and give the tools for people to help propel your information out there, because that is all part of running a successful virtual event.
Now, another very effective way to recruit volunteers is through email and e-blasts and newsletters. You want to cultivate your volunteer recruitment list by calling people and emailing them. Don't underestimate, as Tamara said, the importance of calling volunteers. And keep track of those who are interested in volunteering. You may find people who say, I'd like to do this, but I'm not ready to sign up. You want to put them on your list. You want to send them emails. You want to call them and encourage them to sign up for opportunities. You also want to use something like MailChimp to send weekly newsletters that lists the upcoming volunteer opportunities, highlight things that happened in the past week, and give them news about what's happening generally in the election campaigning world and the candidates we're all working to elect. Get your events on other organizations' email lists. The Grassroots Democrats work with more than 30 other affiliate organizations, and we cross-reference each other and partner to build more of a community and a larger community. Remember, it's all about developing an enticing environment and a community where people feel a part of something and they're in this together. And don't forget to add attendees who come to every event you've got to your volunteer database. You should be growing that volunteer database all the time.
Recruiting through phone banking for volunteers, or what I love to call is phone banking for phone bankers. Calling volunteers to invite them to be joining an event, a fundraiser, a training is always important. Having that personal connection during this pandemic time is essential. You can then send text to those people on your list that haven't actually answered a telephone. And what we want you to think about as well is if you have any friends or people out there who say, I don't want a phone bank, you know what you want to give them? You want to have them phone bank for recruitment. Recruitment calls are the easiest way of doing phone banking. It will enter somebody into the phone banking process, and you can then move them into voter engagement later. What we also find is that we want you to think about, we want you to actually think about putting the hard ask into every phone call you make when you are recruiting. You want to make the ask specific and you want to make it targeted. Rather than saying, can you come? You want to say, when can you come? Rather than saying, is there a time that works best for you? Ask, does Wednesday work for you? If you are specific, if you are direct, if you are genuine in what you do, you're going to recruit the volunteers to be coming.
Now we're going to move into pre-meeting, pre-event preparation, the Zoom setup. Now you want to create a separate Zoom event with a separate Zoom link for each event you're planning. And in order to defend against Zoom bombers and trolls, and if you don't know what Zoom bombers and trolls are, they are people that are looking to blow up your event, disrupt your event, and or record information at your event that they can use later to do you harm or the candidate you're working on harm. So you want to avoid Zoom bombers and trolls. And there's various ways to do that in Zoom. You can enable the waiting room so that all people who sign on with the Zoom link are sent to the waiting room first. You can pre-screen them and then admit them into the event. When they're in the event, or when you're setting it up, actually, you should enable video for the hosts and for participants. Once they're there, you want to ask people to show their face, turn on their video in the Zoom room. Not only does that create more of a community, it also deters trolling, because trolls never want to show their face. Now, you also want to select both when you set up the Zoom meeting, both for telephone and computer audio. This allows volunteers to dial in via phone if they don't have a computer or they're having computer issues. This will help them. By the same token, you don't need to set up a password for a Zoom event if you use the waiting room. So we suggest you use the waiting room instead.
Pre-meeting preparation, participant outreach. Yes. So you want to send a confirmation email or text with the relevant information that somebody has to have. So think about the fact that if you were having a party at your house, you would always send out the directions on how to get there. You would have the street address of turn right, turn left, go here, go there. You want to make sure that you have given people that Zoom link or whatever platform you're using clearly indicated. If there's a password, give it to them in a clear way. Make sure to be including the time zone. It's not something that we're used to, but think about it, because we have no borders. And when you're even making your phone calls, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you need to know what time zone you're calling into. You want to provide instructions on using a Zoom room. We actually have that link for you so that you can teach people how to do it. We don't want people reinventing the wheel when good resources are already out there. You want to give a list of materials that people need. If you're postcarding, do they need stamps? You need a charged telephone. Can you do phone banking only on your phone? No, you actually need a phone and a computer, or a phone and a tablet. Make sure that you've instructed people ahead of time so they know what they need walking in the door. The virtual door, that is. Share your contact information so participants can reach out to you before an event if they have questions, and make sure that you share your excitement. When you're sitting on a Zoom screen, sometimes we get a little bit complacent because, you know what, we're sitting at home, we're just right here, or we can sit up, we can talk, we can be there, because what you have to remember is the energy that's coming from you is going all the way through that meeting. And you want to send a final confirmation once again the day of, so that people get everything that they need.
Now we move to hosting the event. You start an event by greeting everybody and welcoming everyone. And depending on the event's size, you could have everybody who's attending introduce themselves and perhaps share a fun fact about themselves. Again, this is to create that sense of community and to keep people interacting with each other, because you don't want them to feel isolated. That's the whole point of community. Then you have to show people around the Zoom room. They may not know how to use Zoom, as Tamara said. So you want to point out that there is a little microphone at the bottom of their screen so they can mute themselves. There's a little camera so they can turn off their video temporarily if they'd like. There's also a little caret by the mute microphone, that if you press that caret, there's the option to leave computer audio, and that will turn off all sounds.
Okay, Davis,
Now, the other thing you want to do is give the folks all the tools they need to succeed, and we'll go into those a little later. And when you train newbies, be patient. They may not be particularly adept at using computers. You need to walk them through the process and be very patient. Never make somebody feel bad because they need repeat training. And if somebody decides to leave the session while they're phone banking, invite them to rejoin later. Remember, folks come for the cause, but stay for the community and the relationships.
Now, what do we do in terms of hosting a breakout room? We always have a main room, but what I want you to think about is that when you're training, you don't just have the room that you're in like we have right now here, but you have the ability to actually create conference rooms or breakout rooms. Why do you want to do that? Breakout rooms are really important. So when you come into a meeting, you would be able to do a general overview of what it is you're doing. And we are making an assumption right now that everybody is here because we want to win elections, and we're going to be phone banking, texting, postcard writing, voter registering, all these different activities in a virtual environment. When people come into that room, some of them know exactly what they're doing, but some of them are newbies. So you want to create a breakout room that you can take another host to be in that breakout room with everybody that is new and teach them the nuts and bolts of what to do. The other people that have come into that same session that are raring to go, they're going to stay in the main room with us, and they're going to start doing the phone banking, the texting, the letter writing, whatever we're doing on that day. They're going to be able to stay there, and the host is going to be there to keep them going. You want to always make attendees feel comfortable in the activity that they're doing, whether they are new or whether they are veteran to it. You want to also have a recap at the end. When people come into your virtual conference room, into your virtual office, you have different levels happening. By the time you're done with your 2-hour session of work, everybody comes together at the end and you do a closing recap. People get to share what their experience is so that they know that they were part of something larger, and it will make them want to come back later. And what is another thing that we always do? Always take a photo at the end of the event, or we actually suggest doing it at the beginning of the event because sometimes people are dropping off, and be able to share that on your social media. It makes people excited, and it creates something that we call FOMO, fear of missing out.
Now, phone bank, oh, no, follow up first, Tamara. I jumped the gun.
That's right. That is me. I'm doing follow-up. After an event. You want to contact the attendees, and you want to find out what their thoughts were, and you want to make sure that they have signed up for another event. In organizing, if you've ever been to a Canvas, if you've ever been to a phone bank, if you've ever done anything, you are not allowed out the door until an organizer has asked you to sign up for your next event. So make sure at the end of the event, you have asked them to sign up for their next piece. What else? If you've been tracking the information properly and you knew what your RSVPs were, and you then also identified who came and who did not, because what can you do? If you're really busy, take a screenshot, like we said, that photo of your screen, and you can identify who has not come to your event. Take that opportunity to contact everybody that did not show up, find out how they are. During COVID time, there's a double reason to be following up with people. You want to be asking them to RSVP for another event if they missed this one. Maybe they were overwhelmed and they couldn't get into the Zoom room, so you have to help them get into it next time. Or maybe something wasn't going right with them. Somebody in their family has COVID, they're not doing well. A follow-up makes them feel connected to you. So what else should you do at the end of an event? Celebrate your success. The first time you run one of these events may not go so hot, but the next time after that and the one after that is always going to get better.
Now let's move to some details about phone banking in the virtual world. Door-to-door engagement used to be the best way to engage a voter, but during the COVID era, my apologies, phone banking is the new virtual canvassing. And in terms of what you're doing, phone banking is just like canvassing, only voter contact is by phone instead of knocking on doors. It's important to let volunteers understand that, because they think it's all about bothering voters. It's not. It's about communicating with voters, engaging them in conversation in the same way you do when you knock on doors. Now, as I mentioned before, you can teach volunteers how to leave audio so they can remain in the session while phone banking. That way they don't hear the leader training other people or people making phone calls on another line, etc. Those who choose not to remain and actually leave the Zoom meeting, make sure you invite them to rejoin the Zoom meeting at 15 minutes before the phone bank ends. That will give enough time for you to debrief, share your experiences, let people know how it went, maybe share your most successful call. And one thing also, don't let voters get discouraged by getting a lot of hangups or bad numbers. That clears out the database for campaigns and is just as important. And besides, campaigns assess the success of a phone bank collectively, all the volunteers who are participating, not just one.
Texting in the virtual world. So we would think that this is really easy, right? Everybody just takes out their telephone and they can be texting. Texting is a program. We're not going through how to do texting right now, but it's something that we do at the Grassroots Democrats HQ all the time, so come and join us. But what we want to tell you is if you're running a texting program, how do you do it and what makes a Zoom room different than we were just talking about phone banking? Number one, you need to be thinking about when you're actually creating that texting program. Think about where you are in the campaign cycle, because what we know about texting, which we think is the greatest thing ever, right? If you text at the wrong time in a campaign cycle and a campaign is doing it, somebody opts out of actually choosing to do text, opts out of being a part of the voter file system with you, the campaign cannot then text at the GOTV, get out the vote time. So what we want you to think about when you're thinking about what to do in this virtual world, pick what you're doing and how you're doing it at the right time in the cycle. In terms of working virtually and texting rather than being in person, you want to, prior to actually getting into the Zoom room with everyone, remember how we talked about you should have your tools and everything you need. You want to tell people what they should bring. What you need to do as a leader is you need to upload all the volunteers to the texting platform before people come into your Zoom room. By the time they get into the Zoom room, they're already in the system, and all that you're doing is you're training them and you're helping to actually onboard them. You also want to remain on the call for these texting opportunities. A lot of people think, oh, you know what? Wait a minute. I already know how to text. I know how to hustle. I know how to use Relay. I know how to use Spoke. But by doing it in a community environment like this, you're going to keep people going, number one. Number two, in the Zoom environment that we're in, we can be answering questions with people in real time, and we can be creating community. We are all so separated right now. Use texting platforms and texting events in the Zoom environment as your way to be able to be staying connected. I am going to answer a question that I saw in the chat. A couple of people have asked, because it does relate to both phone banking and text banking. People are asking, how do you get the phone numbers? How do you know they're accurate? How do you get the data? Each one of us that is going to be running a Zoom room is going to be doing it by working through a platform of information that came from voter files. You might be getting that information from a campaign. You might be getting it from an IE, an independent expenditure organization, or you might be coming through organizations like the Grassroots Democrats HQ that has already curated all of that for you. You can literally come to our site to find the scripts, the phone numbers, the information libraries, and be able to run your own Zoom room that we're teaching you here.
Okay, let's move to postcarding in the virtual world. I'm sure you all know that writing postcards has become an extremely popular way to reach voters. Now, here's what you need to do. You've got to give instructions to your volunteers how they can obtain the supplies they're going to need to participate in a postcard event. They're going to need postcards, scripts, and addresses. You may make postcards available from a contactless pickup point. You may suggest that they purchase them through Amazon or Etsy. And you give them some way of letting you know they would like scripts and addresses in advance. Now, if they don't get them in advance, and you want to encourage people to get them in advance as much as possible, because distributing them during the actual event takes a lot of time. At the event, once again, the leader should encourage the environment to be warm and inviting and for people to communicate. The whole idea of doing a postcard event party is not to give people a feeling they're sitting in a room with other people, sharing conversation, sharing stories, or perhaps listening to music. Whatever you want to do to create that environment that is inviting and people will want to come back.
It mentioned to me that I should mute when I'm typing to people in the text, so I apologize. I'm sometimes muting and forgetting to unmute. This is what we want you to remember before we go on, because we're going to do questions and answers next. Remember that volunteers come for the cause, but they stay because of the relationships. That's a statement that every organizer knows, every organizer lives by. And what we need to do by creating virtual events that can be run well, that can be inviting, that can be something that people want to come back to, is that we are creating relationships in this environment. What we'd like to do now is to take questions. I know that Shatara has been watching the chat since it started, and she's going to use the next, we have about 13 minutes to be answering questions.
Hi, so we have one from Melissa. Do you set up your own texting campaigns, question mark?
Actually, we work through the campaigns that we're promoting. It's a very expensive proposition to set up your own texting program. And although we seek donations from volunteers and other sources, it's pretty expensive to access your own texting program. So we work through campaigns. We also work through other organizations that might themselves own a texting program. As I mentioned before, we have a number of affiliates and we team or partner on a number of our events. So we pool our resources, which could include texting programs.
We have another one from Judy. Is texting as effective as a postcard?
So
I'll turn to you, Tamara.
Okay, so somebody else had asked, and I did answer in the chat because they wanted to know, how do we know what the comparative effectiveness is? So right now, as we're talking, because I don't want people to drop off before they get the information, Shatara or Davis are going to put into the chat the information for how to get involved with the Grassroots Democrats HQ. So one, you can come and attend any one of our events where we're leading postcarding, texting, and phone banking. So you can see the engagement and example of how we're doing it, because our job is to not only run those, but to also be training affiliates to help you do exactly what we just talked about. The question about what is more effective, on our website, there is a resource document in the resource section that we're going to put into the chat so you can go directly there. We do have a document that is showing that. The answer to you is, one is not necessarily more effective than the other, because the truth is that if we want to win in elections, we have to be doing, in the old days, we would say door knocking, we'd have to be doing phone banking, we would have to be doing texting, and also letter writing. Letter writing and postcarding didn't seem as important before as it is today. But the truth is, you cannot win an election by only postcarding. That is never going to change a person's desire to actually vote. But if you combine that postcard with a phone call, if you combine that postcard with a text, then the exponential effect of that postcard is what actually matters. So I know the answer you wanted was, which one is more important? The only answer that we can give you is that phone banking has become the new virtual canvassing. We cannot door knock, so it is the most effective way of changing and engaging a person in conversation to get them to do what we want them to do. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that we can never reach by a phone call. We used to be able to do that by door knocking. So what are we going to do next? The letter writing and the postcarding become that much more important. There are no studies out that will show us, until this is done, how effective a postcard is in pandemic times compared to before.
I just want to add something. In terms of the chronology of things, postcarding is advantageous both ahead of time and closer to the election. Texting, if you do it too early, people can opt out of texting, and then you won't be able to text them when you get closer to the election and GOTV. So you have to balance that and work with the campaigns and take their lead on how they want to work texting.
Can I actually jump into a question that I just saw, because it's one I think a lot of people are going to have. They're asking about leaving voicemail messages when doing phone calling. So I want to be really specific on this one because it comes up all the time. We always say you do not leave a voicemail message unless the campaign has told you to do it. Sitting on my shoulder all the time is a campaign strategist who knows way more information than I do, because we are getting the information from the campaigns, from the source that is giving us the data, the script, and what they want us to do. Most of the time, they don't want us to leave a voicemail message. And the reason is for a couple different reasons. One is, if you do not leave a voicemail message, another volunteer is going to make a phone call and they're going to reach a person. That way, the voter will not get annoyed that they had both a voicemail and somebody making a phone call to them. Studies have shown that it is that first time contact that has the most effectiveness. And each time you start to contact a person after that with a phone call, it could become less effective. So always listen to what that campaign is telling you as to whether they want a voicemail or not. Shatara, what's the next question?
While you're looking for it, the other thing you can do in terms of organizing for events is consider doing specially themed events. We do a Millennial Monday, and it's a lot of fun for millennials. We have a Young Dems group. We also have a Grandparents for Democracy phone bank, and we do phone banks that are geared toward women who vote, and we have Spanish phone banks as well. So you might want to do targeted phone banks when you choose what kind of event you want to do. And Sanity Sunday postcarding. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shatara.
Stephanie Brown has a question about MailChimp. Is there a trick to getting the messages not to go into the recipient's spam folder?
Yeah, I can, in terms of Google or Gmail, if you have chosen to break out your email into categories, primary, promotion, etc., if it goes into the promotion tab, then what you want to do is transfer it, move it into your primary tab. Gmail will then ask you, do you want to do this for all future messages from whatever source it is? And if you click yes, going forward, MailChimp emails will go into your primary folder. You can do the same thing in Outlook. Outlook gives you the choice to set up a rule for a given source of an email.
I'm going to jump in with another thing that I'm seeing people asking about in terms of specialty groups that we actually just talked about. I'm putting here the link tree for the Grassroots Democrats HQ. If anybody here is somebody who knows others who speak Spanish fluently, please let them know and give them our link tree so that they can sign up to be getting involved in the congressional, Senate, and presidential phone banking opportunities with us, and soon texting in Spanish. We also have opportunities for young adults and for to become fellows and drop-in program where young adults who are high school and college are getting involved. We have a Grandparents for Democracy group. And we basically have, at this point, over 45 affiliate groups that are working with us. So we can funnel special interest people into all the different activities for doing phone banking, texting, as well as postcard writing.
I think we have time for one more question, Shatara.
Relates to Zoom. Does Zoom provide email and contact info for participants to host the event?
Tamara, you want to handle that?
So
I'm not sure.
So it depends on how you set the Zoom account up. And on our website, grassrootsdems.org, there's a resource tab there. In that resource tab, we actually have a manual for you on how to do Zoom. I have to give a lot of credit to many of our manuals, many of our materials. Melissa and I might be on screen talking about everything, but you really do have to know that it really is the team of Davis, Shatara, Mana, Barry, Andy. I'm sure I'm forgetting what?
Ingrid.
Ingrid, Eve. We have a lot of different people that are building all of our resource materials. So the answer is yes, depending on how you set up your Zoom event, you can actually collect the basic information on people so that you know exactly who came into your room ahead of time. So this is what we would like you to do. All of you that have any other questions that we were not able to answer, we're going to give you our contact information. Davis, can you go to the next screen? Because there is our information is on the next screen. So Tamara at grassrootsdems.org, and then Melissa at grassrootsdems.org. We have just put it into the chat. We welcome you to be contacting either one of us with any questions that we did not answer. We welcome you to be coming to any of our events by using our link tree and signing up and sharing that out. We hope that you were taking screenshots and photos of yourself here, letting people know that they can lead events and that we are here to help them through it. Do you want to close out, Melissa?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for attending. I hope you found our session instructive and you enjoyed it. Remember, enjoyment is what it's all about. So you keep coming back. And thank you for attending. Thank you, Tamara. I had a blast doing this with you.